So we've all gotten pretty used to telling AI to do one thing at a time, right? But what if you could teach it to run an entire process for you? Today we're going to dig into the automation mindset, a really powerful way to get your time back by automating the workflows that eat up your day. Let's dive in.
Does your day ever just feel like a never-ending series of digital chores? You know the drill. Copying info from an email over to a spreadsheet, then pinging a teammate on Slack, then logging an update in some project tool. It's that kind of repetitive, manual work that just completely sucks the life out of you. Well, this explainer is all about how to escape that trap.
All right, so here's the game plan. First, we'll talk about the promise of automation and why it's so important to shift your thinking from tasks to workflows. Then, we're going to get super practical. We'll break down the anatomy of a workflow, figure out what's actually worth automating, and look at the tools that make it all happen. All with the goal of, working smarter, not harder.
Look, we've all seen those AI agents that can summarize a single document. And yeah, that's cool, but let's be honest, that's kind of a one-off party trick. The real game changer, the real magic, is when you can teach that AI to work across all your different apps, automating a whole chain of events that stretches across your entire digital workspace.
And this is really the heart of it, right? We have to shift our thinking. Instead of just asking an AI to perform one little action for us, we're designing a system, a machine, that handles the whole sequence from start to finish, without us needing to jump in at every single step. Okay, so that brings us right to the core concept for today. This is a huge, fundamental change in how we see our work. It's moving away from thinking in terms of these isolated, manual tasks and starting to see the bigger picture, the whole interconnected system. That's where you find the potential for a real automated workflow.
And this slide, it just nails the difference perfectly. A task is you, in the trenches, manually copying that data cell by cell. A workflow? That's the system you built that does it all for you while you're grabbing a coffee. See? A task is reactive and manual. A workflow is proactive and automatic. It's the huge difference between doing the work and designing the work.
So how do we even start building one of these things? Well, it turns out that pretty much any process you can think of can be mapped out for automation by spotting 5 core components. And trust me, once you get these down, you are going to start seeing potential workflows everywhere.
Okay, so think of this like setting up a line of dominoes. First, you've got the trigger. That's the first domino you flick to get everything started. Then come the actions. That's the rest of the dominoes toppling one after another. A handoff is when one chain of dominoes kicks off a totally different one. Data mapping is the info that gets passed along the way, and the output, well, that's the awesome result at the very end. Let's break each piece down.
All right, first up is the trigger. This is the starting gun. It's the event that kicks the entire process into motion. And the key here is that it's not you manually deciding, okay, time to start. Nope. It's an event that just happens. A perfect example is a customer filling out an inquiry form on your website. That submission, that's the trigger.
Okay, so once that trigger fires, what happens next? Well, that's where actions and handoffs come in. This is where the brains of the operation live. The system might have to make a little decision like, is this a billing question or a support question? Based on that, it takes an action, and then it performs a handoff. And then bam, it pings the right team in their Slack channel.
And to wrap it up, we've got data mapping and the output. Data mapping is super important. It's basically the delivery service that takes all that info, the customer's name, their email, their actual problem, and carries it from the form right into that brand new support ticket. And the output is the final result. A ticket is created and the customer automatically gets a confirmation email, the whole loop is closed, and you didn't have to lift a finger.
Okay, so now we get the structure of a workflow. But here's the million-dollar question. What should you actually automate? Because not every task is a good candidate. To figure that out, we're going to need a simple little litmus test. Okay, take a look at this. What I love here is how clear the line is. On one side, you automate the stuff that's repetitive, follows clear rules, and happens all the time. You know, the tasks where, let's be honest, you're going to make a typo because you're bored out of your mind. But on the other side, you have to keep things human when they're unpredictable or require real human judgment, empathy, or building a relationship. Bottom line, automate the grunt work, not the great work.
All right, so how does all this magic actually happen? What's the tech behind it? Well, it all happens on platforms that fall under a category called Integration Platform as a Service, or you'll hear it called iPaaS.
The easiest way to think about an iPaaS platform, like Zapier, is as a universal translator for all your apps.
It's a service that lets you connect your email to your spreadsheet to your project tool, all without having to write a single line of complicated code. It's basically the digital duct tape that holds your entire automated workflow together. So inside a tool like Zapier, one of these workflows is called a Zap. It's that simple. It's the recipe for your automation. So for our customer inquiry example, the Zap is just a simple instruction. The trigger is new form submission, and the action is create a support ticket. That's it.
Okay, now this is where things get really, really cool. Sometimes, a simple if this, then that rule just isn't going to cut it. You need a bit of reasoning. That's when you bring in an agent. Think of it like a little AI brain you can pop right into your workflow. It could classify an email as urgent based on its tone and then draft a high-priority response for you to look over. It handles the steps that need a little bit of thinking.
Of course, for any of this to work, you need data, right? You got to get it in, and you got to store it somewhere. That's where things like forms and tables come in. In our example, the form is what collects all that initial customer info. That info could then be automatically saved to a table, creating a nice, structured log of all customer issues. So think of them as the front door and the filing cabinet for your automations.
Okay, time for a quick but really, really important reality check here. Especially if you're in a big company, you can't just go rogue and start hooking up all your company's apps. Look, letting an outside system poke around in your company's data, that's a huge security risk. So yeah, you're almost definitely going to need to get the green light from IT, security, and maybe even the legal team.
And listen, the potential here is just massive. I mean, a platform like Zapier can plug into over 7,000 different apps. That's insane. But that kind of power comes with a huge responsibility. So before you even think about connecting your work email or anything else, your only first step, is to check your company's internal security policy. Seriously, know the rules before you start playing.
So this all brings us back to the big picture, right? Why even bother with all this? The point isn't just to be clever with some new technology. It's about fundamentally changing our approach to work, for the better. And please, if you take one thing away from this, let it be this. This is not about automating yourself out of a job. Not at all. It's the complete opposite. It's about finding those repetitive, low-value, soul-crushing parts of your job and handing them off to a machine. It frees you up, it frees up your brain to focus on the stuff that humans are actually good at. The creative problem solving, the big picture strategic thinking, the stuff that really matters.
So I want to leave you with a question. I want you to really think about your own work week. What is that one thing? That one annoying, repetitive task that, if it just, poof, vanished from your to-do list forever, would totally change your week. Find that task, because that is your starting point.